This is Dr. Karen, and you are listening to the De Facto Leaders Podcast on the B Podcast Network, where I share up-to-date, evidence-based practices, my own experiences, and guest interviews designed to help pediatric therapists, educators, and aspiring school leaders design services that support social, emotional, and academic growth and set kids up for success in adulthood. Whether you want to learn effective strategies for your therapy session or classroom, be an influential leader on your team, or find creative ways to use your skills to advance in your career, I've got you covered. Hey everybody, it's Dr. Karen, and welcome to episode 221 of the De Facto Leaders Podcast on the B Podcast Network. In this conversation, I chat with Connie Hurley-Pronley, who is one of the members of my Language Therapy Advanced Foundations program, and we have a conversation about some language therapy case studies. So some specific things we discuss are a high school student who was very disengaged and kind of sick of coming to therapy, and how Connie was able to re-engage her and get her excited about learning, specifically about vocabulary. And then she also shares some case studies of students who were working on things like syntax. I know that syntax can be a really challenging area to address because it can be difficult to figure out how to work up a hierarchy, how to keep it engaging for students, and also how to make it functional so that you see generalization. So Connie shares a couple great success stories in this conversation. And also she shares how impactful it was to have a good system for language therapy and how to streamline things. I know that it can be really exciting when you're starting off as a clinician to be working on things like lesson plans, but after a while it can be really cumbersome, especially when you have a big caseload and when you realize that when you spend a lot of time putting materials together, you don't always get the return on that investment. And really what I am about is teaching people frameworks, really getting back to the basics so we can keep things simple. And we can find ways to make things engaging without actually distracting from the important skills that we're teaching our students. That's why in Language Therapy Advanced Foundations, I focus on foundational principles that can be implemented without a ton of materials. You can absolutely use the materials that you already have, but I use a framework to teach you the fundamentals of doing effective word study and focus on vocabulary, pulling in things like metacognition so that students are thinking about words differently, so that you can see that generalization, and so that you can get good results with your students without spending hours planning. Connie actually shares how she was essentially able to cut her planning time in half once she got the system that she learned in Language Therapy Advanced Foundations. So Language Therapy Advanced Foundations is my program for SLPs who want to create a system for language therapy. Specifically, I teach you how to build some of those foundational skills that are going to support comprehension. So skills like morphology, orthography, semantics, syntax, and phonology. So those skills that are going to support those higher level language skills. So if you have students on your caseload and you've been working on WH questions and following directions and inferencing, and your students just aren't making progress, chances are it's because they need some support in those foundational language skills that I just mentioned. A lot of times these foundational skills are what supports those higher level skills. So many times people have part of the process in place, but not all of it. They really need to back up and focus on some of those foundational things like syntax and vocabulary that are going to support that high level comprehension. So to learn more about the program, you can go to drkarenspeech.com/language therapy. Just an FYI, before you listen to this interview, Connie's actually one of the founding members of Language Therapy Advanced Foundations, which means that we recorded this interview before I had a nice podcasting microphone. So my audio quality in this interview is not as good as it is now. So please bear with me, but you'll still be able to hear the conversation and all the great success stories that Connie has to share. If you feel like you have been stuck in language therapy and you want to get some ideas about how to create a better system, this interview is definitely for you. And again, to learn more about Language Therapy Advanced Foundations, you can go to drkarenspeech.com/language therapy. So thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy this interview with Connie Hurley-Pronley.
My name is Connie Hurley-Pronley. I've been a speech-language pathologist for, oh my goodness, I don't even know, well over 25 years. And I've worked a lot in birth to 3, but most recently have been doing more of my work in teletherapy and with school-age children. So anywhere from elementary all the way through high school, and the gamut of language disorders and phonology disorders.
Yeah. So how did you hear about Language Therapy Advance?
Basically through a email that I received. And I was intrigued because I have always done a lot of language therapy. I enjoy doing language therapy, but you had mentioned some questions like, about carryover and things, and that's always been an issue for me. So I thought I need to do this. That's why I joined.
Okay, great. So, and you kind of answered this question already, but what specific things were you struggling with before you started the program?
I would guess more the carryover, or being able to see that, they're getting 90% on being able to tell me what a synonym and an antonym is, but they can't use it anywhere else. That was the most frustration that I think I had. And the other frustration I have is just what vocabulary to work on and how to work on it. I was pulling things out of the air basically to do. And so now I feel like I have a system, at least starting to have a system. That makes a little more sense.
It does. So what was that like for you before you had the system? I mean, what was your job like when you didn't have
Oh my gosh. Even with the teletherapy, I was spending probably, I don't even know, like for each student it could be different, but I could work for half an hour to an hour just putting together like a PowerPoint to put up on as a lesson. And then we would do that lesson in one session and I'd be like, okay, now I have to do this again. And that was becoming a little bit overwhelming when you have a caseload of over 40 kids and you're trying to figure out, okay, now what? And then the other part too is they're all at different levels. So you couldn't really use the same PowerPoint lesson with the next student, or if they're at different grade levels, you couldn't, it was getting very overwhelming. I think. So that's why when I saw your email, I thought, oh my gosh, this is a blessing in disguise.
I appreciate that. So do you feel like you're able to use the same principles across multiple sessions now that you have a system?
I am starting to. It's been a slow process for me to incorporate it because I've just been trying it in bits and pieces to see how it works. And I'm really new to it. So so it's been interesting, but I felt like some of it I was already doing. So with nouns and everything, I really had that down. And in fact, just started with a young man yesterday. He had been absent for the last 2 weeks. So I got to work with him yesterday and I said, hey, would you be a guinea pig for me? He's in high school, so it was really nice. And this was a student that I honestly thought may have been cognitively delayed like 2 years ago when I started working with him because he couldn't use hardly any language. And we had worked a lot on describing nouns and things. And he got better and better and better, and using sentences, and his grammar was getting better. And now he can describe and do all these things. So I said, I know you know this, but I'd like to bring it to you in a different format so that it's easier for you to use in your reading and everything else. So we kind of started over.
Yeah.
And the part that I loved the most was the self-questioning strategies. So I threw that into a PowerPoint for him, and we went through describing like we normally do and doing our definitions like we normally do, and then went into the self-questioning, and that was really helping him. Like, he was getting it. He was connecting the dots. And that just made me smile. So then we kind of went into the verbs, because I have never done the verbs and the adjectives the way you have it laid out in the templates. And so I threw those in there. And of course, he has an hour session, so it's really kind of fun.
That's nice.
He asked for it because he really enjoys this. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, because it was helping him. Obviously, if something's making you feel more confident, you're going to learn more. So we now work for an hour, because he didn't like after a half hour to just end and then be kind of stuck in midair.
Yeah.
So we always have a good way to finish off our sessions. And so I started the verb part of it, the second half of the session. And that was a little more difficult for him. And so he's looking forward to next week, trying to finish that off and working more from that angle. And I'm excited because I feel like it's going to take him even another step, another level for him.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a good point that you bring up, that it was difficult, but at least you have some interest there and he wants to learn more. I think sometimes we feel like we have to be perfect and we have to teach them everything, but just them wanting to know more is, we've done our job there. And getting them to question and ask those questions on their own, that's huge. So
it is. And he was
awesome.
Getting it, like I'd say, what is a noun? And then he'd use the questions to figure it out instead of just person, place, or thing, and that was kind of cool. I'm thinking, all right, he's thinking about this. He's, he's going a little step further because he already understood the rest of it. I'm hoping he'll do the same with the verbs, because coming up with a synonym or an antonym is harder for him to do. So I'm hoping that that'll help him a little more. Yeah.
Well, I think that just that self-questioning, like you said, is key there. When we teach them to have that internal dialogue is when we make those changes, because then he could have been asking himself those questions in between your sessions, and then maybe he'll come primed and ready to go.
I'm hoping, because I told him to look at this differently now through the week and then bring me some of his vocabulary that he finds, and then we can look at it using these formats. So hopefully he will do that. And then I have several students like that I've slowly started to bring this in for. So they're hopefully looking for more words in their reading and whatever, and bringing them back to me. So that's kind of how I get the vocabulary now, instead of just pulling it off my shelf.
So you ask the students to bring words that they're interested in looking at?
Yeah.
That's great.
I have one student that I see in person that will bring me like 3-4 words every week now, and we're putting it kind of in a game format. So we're adding it to the game board, and we're listing them alphabetically kind of around the game board. And so at the end, I'm hoping to use it as a game and be able to go back and have him do some of the questioning and review some of the words, but they're all coming from his reading and his spelling and some of his other subjects. He has to write speeches every week. He's more homeschooled, so it's real interesting. And then he'll bring them and he can talk about them. And he's more interested in talking about words that were difficult for him in his reading than for me to say, well, what is a ball? Or what is a pizza? Or what is a, So it's been kind of interesting that way.
Yeah, that is interesting, because I think part of it is just being aware that you don't know a word. Sometimes they are just they don't know when they don't know.
Well, that's true, because
No.
we were working on a speech just this last week on the Great Depression. And I don't know a lot about the Great Depression,
Yeah.
but he brought everything that he was reading and researching for it. And then he started to do his speech. And part of something that happens with him is when he can't recall a word, or he really doesn't know what a word is, which is kind of a flag for me, is he stutters. He'll start to stutter, or he'll try to go too fast through the words. So then I'll stop him and I'll be like, where did you get that information from? And then he showed me, and I said, well, read the sentence. And he did. And I said, so what does it mean? And he had no clue.
Yeah.
Then we went to, well, what words do you not know in that sentence? And there were like 3 of them.
Yeah.
You know, like crisis, international, financial.
Yeah.
And so it was real easy then to plug them into something and say, okay, well, let's look this up and let's figure it out. And once he discussed it, he went back to his speech, and I said, try to do it in your own words now. And he did, and it was beautiful. I mean, there was no stuttering, there was no,
Yeah.
so it was kind of fun. And I said, so now you need to do this for next week, and he's going to bring back more words.
Yeah.
But, we only got through this much of his speech. But
That's okay.
yeah.
Well, maybe you laid the groundwork for him to work on it on his own.
Yeah. And the great thing is I didn't even plan for that session. I just told him to bring his speech, and I told him to bring his books that he was working with, and we just went with that. And I didn't try to come up with all these other activities, which was, I did the one module where you said you could do this with a paper and pencil, and I'm thinking,
you can,
this really
yeah.
worked.
I think it's a different mindset. I think we feel like we have to plan, but and we shouldn't go in unprepared, but at the same time, I think that you're not necessarily winging it if you have the basic principles in your head and you know what you're doing. You don't necessarily have to spend a lot of time gathering games and things that don't really matter that much if you've got the basic bones there to what you're doing.
I told him what he should bring, and he did. I had backups in case he didn't.
Yeah. It's always good to have.
Or if he didn't have any vocabulary, I mean, there are days where he doesn't bring me anything. And so, then I have to go with a game or go with something else with the vocabulary. But when he does bring it, it's much more interesting for him. It's much more interesting for me because I know I'm doing something that is functional in his everyday classwork. Yeah,
that's great. I think if he's the one driving it, I mean, obviously you're guiding it, but you're keeping it aligned with where he needs to be. So that's
and I'm using vocabulary that he really needs to learn for his academics. So now he can go back and talk about stock and talk about the stock market and take a quiz on that and know what those words are. So it's kind of
that's awesome. It's interesting to hear how it can be used for older students and via the online format, because it's different, but it is still workable if you've got the right framework in place.
Well, what I like about the online is I've been using more and more. I always had them doing something with the written in a way, but now I incorporate it so much more. So they're doing a lot more typing, a lot more making sentences, like not just verbally saying them online. And so we use a lot of the typing tool more and more now. And that has really helped my kids with autism, even the lower level ones. So
that's interesting.
It's really interesting because it's just bizarre. And even the parents who come online with them they're like, Connie, he's talking so much more at home and spontaneous. And I'm like, okay, how is this working?
Well, I think we forget how important the written symbol is. We're very verbal, but you need the orthographic information too.
I do have some questions about it, but it's working so far. I just don't know how to take it to the next step.
Yeah. What are your questions about that?
Well, I have two students that it's interesting. I had found a PowerPoint that someone else had produced that had like pictures, action pictures, and then had the different questions. And I had already been working on expanding sentences by answering questions like the who and the what doing, all of that. And so we kind of took it step by step all the way down, and they could see how the sentence was getting longer and longer every time you asked a question. And then there would be like a box for the small words like the, and a smaller box for is. And those boxes seemed to really help them to figure out. So we could do the dog is catching the ball or whatever, and having those in the yard or something, and having those little boxes. So then we took away, because what I had, it's hard to explain, but what I had were like pictures. So I could actually send you what the PowerPoint looked
so
like.
was it a picture to show each word that they had to
basically
say?
They could have the pictures, and then they were typing the words with those pictures.
So it was kind of outlining the syntactic structure for them?
Correct. And then we took that away, and then all we had were the boxes, and then maybe the question under the blanks. So they would have to fill in the who, and they'd have to fill in the what, and that type of thing. And we took away the questions, and we just had the boxes with the blank lines, and then we just had the blank lines. So then they had to make the sentence. Well, I have one who's almost in high school, and he's got the that pattern down, that particular sentence type. But now, how do you flip to another sentence type? Like then we had to do plurals, and he added the plural, which was really nice, and we pointed that out to him, and he seems to, I talk as if he can understand everything I say. I'm not 100% sure. But he seems to really, he doesn't, like before he would get so frustrated and he would barely talk, and now you're starting to understand his words more. And mom is just thrilled because he's answering questions at home. And she's learning how to coach him because he was so echolalic, and he's allowing him to do his own words. So it's just been kind of a really nice all-in-one type lesson for him. But it's just yesterday, we were trying to work with the plural, and then I was trying to teach him the are instead of the is. And he got very frustrated. And I said, I'm not trying to confuse you, but or sometimes I think he feels dumb too. I'm not sure what's kind of going on there. And so I said, I'm not.
Validate him.
And so I just said, this is new, and I'm teaching it to you now. So I didn't expect you to know it, but we crossed off as is, and we're trying to make an R. Just simple things like that. Like, how do I move to the next sentence type? And
I think it sounds like you've got a pretty good scaffold in place where you're gradually decreasing the amount of cueing available, but this would, for the sentence structure, the sentence combining lesson, some of those activities where you're taking two sentences and putting them into one, helpful for him, and you can move up the hierarchy there, because really with syntax, it's a cohesion at the sentence level issue where he's not quite sure how to put the structures in place. So you could try some of those, and then really focus on why is it are instead of is? What information do you have there where it's you use are when there's more than one, like you said with the plural. So add information. And I think that you just like you said you had scaffolded, and I think just gradually decreasing those prompts. Sometimes when you give them a little bit of structure, then they can create some of it themselves. Where, if maybe you start the sentence, you're giving them a little bit to get them going. Sometimes they don't know how to get going, and then you can gradually fade the amount of information you give them, if that makes sense. But with syntax,
I can do that with some of my other students, like my elementary kiddos, but these it seemed like the visual needed to be there for
Yeah.
some of these kiddos with autism. And then I have another young lady who has autism that was doing the same type of lesson, but just yesterday was combining the sentences.
Ooh, that's exciting.
Like she was we would do a 2-picture scene because we've kind of moved up, and I said, we're going to start to learn how to tell a story. And she did it. And I don't know where it came from because I didn't teach her.
Yeah.
So she would say, like the pig is looking at the mud and then he started rolling in it or something like that. I mean, it wasn't that complex, but she like put the sentence together. I went, where did you get the and? I never taught you that.
It's interesting how you can teach them one thing and they can sometimes figure something else out, which is exactly what we want to be doing, because we can't teach them everything, and we want them to be paying attention to that, because that's how they fill in those blanks on their own, which we know our kids don't do very well, and we want to
So she may have just done that on her own?
It's possible that she, just being more aware, if you were working on something related, that she filled in the blanks and was just more aware of the words and was able to piece it together, and just if she was thinking about it differently. I think you've really, the next question I had was, have you had any breakthroughs or aha moments? And you've pretty much answered that question, but did you want to share anything else?
Yeah, here's another really interesting thing. I have a 5-year-old that I'm doing, she has severe phonology. And so when I was going through the first few modules and it was talking about the orthographic, I thought, I wonder, I've never done any words with her. And Mom happened to mention one day that she was getting bored with speech. She actually has to go to a library to get online because she's in a very remote area.
Okay.
And she's a very intelligent girl, but you couldn't understand anything she said. And I think it was possibly because she was trying to say this much more than a normal 5-year-old would do. So Mom, I said, well, what does she like? And Mom was starting to say, well, she loves books and she loves looking at words and she likes, doing things with the sound being attached to the letters and that kind of thing. And I was like, oh, and then I took this module and I thought, well, why don't I bring words to her? Maybe she's just bored with pictures. So we now do her lesson where if she does the whole entire lesson and she's practicing her words and whatever with the pictures, then I have her pick like 3 to 5 of her favorite pictures. And then we go to the writing board and she will tell me a whole story. She's the most imaginative little girl I've ever met. And she will tell me a whole story and she likes to make sure that the word, she can see her word in the story and I just type it out for her. And then we go back and we change like all of the sounds she's been working on to different colors. And then she can count the different letters, like how many g sounds are in your story and how many k sounds are in your story, and depending upon what we're working on that day. And she just thinks she just gets so tickled about it. But then when she sees it, she's actually saying it. And I think she's almost picturing it in her mind or something.
Yeah, that's exactly what we want, is that picture.
I think so.
Rolling in their mind.
It's crazy because even Mom said that a lot of her sounds are really becoming clearer. And it seems like we're moving into the sentence level a lot faster. And I'm thinking, what's going on? So that to me was another aha. Ooh, I should be doing this more often.
Yeah, so it was more adding the print exposure and the syntactic structure, those elements.
And she loves it. And now I put the words with the pictures all the time so that she can actually see the word with the picture. We talk about different ways that, different letters that the k sound can, is associated with. And it's just amazing to me how she's just kind of flying through it more when she sees the word.
Yeah.
But
that's awesome.
Yeah. And I would have never, not with a 5-year-old, I would have never thought to do that.
Yeah, I mean, we can introduce the print way earlier than we think we can, and we should. We need to.
Well, then I have another mom, too, that she said, what can I be doing more of? So after I had such success with this little girl, this boy is 4, I think, same thing, severe phonological, and she's been now, when he reads books, he loves to read with Mom. And so she's been starting to do sight words with him, and he's also homeschooled. And I would just say, well, if you're working on, like, if you have a book with a lot of S sounds, point out the S's, have him find them, have him, So she's been doing more and more of that, and he's been having more fun with some of this stuff. So I thought that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
They can learn their sounds better that way than just with pictures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that sometimes we forget that we need the print.
Mm-hmm. And we all know that phonology leads sometimes to reading issues. So
yeah, kids,
why not start right away?
Yeah, absolutely.
With all of that. And duh.
Yeah, I think sometimes we feel like they have to master it. It's not that they have to master it, but we need to start them thinking about the language.
Right, exactly. So that just kind of kicked me into a different gear when I thought, well, I've always used the word, but not like this, not over and over again. So I think there are pieces of this that I was doing, but not in a consistent way with a really good theory behind it necessarily. So that's why I love it. And then being able to have them ask themselves those questions, I think, was a huge thing that was missing in my therapy.
Awesome. So what would you say to someone who is thinking about joining the program, but they're on the fence?
Oh my gosh, I think this has been a great way to piece everything together, not just for myself, but for all the students that are working with it. And isn't that what we want to bring to them, so that they can be successful on their own without us having to be with them for year after year after year after year. And I'm really hoping that I can learn to present this in a way to them that they can take and soak it in. So I would say go for it.
Yeah.
Learn all you can about this, because I wish I would have known it 20 some years ago.
Awesome.
Instead of right now.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I just think that was a piece that was missing for the carryover, and it just has taken the frustration away from me. I'm more excited about doing the therapy because that always has been like, oh God, here I have another kid do it. And it just was boring for me. I can't say any other way about it.
Yeah.
And now it's more exciting. Like, I feel like I can actually help them, and it's going to make a difference. And I don't have to teach them 1,000 words, that they're going to be able to do it on their own.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's great.
It's a big piece. I really thank you a lot.
Well, I thank you for being a part of it.
More. Yes, definitely. So.
Well, thank you for all of that. Is there anything else that you want to add? What is there, or something that you think is different about this program compared to other courses or continuing ed that you've done?
Yeah, I guess metalinguistics has always kind of scared me.
Yeah.
And now I think this course has helped with the confidence of being able to use it more with the students, but not just, I think it's helped in the whole gamut, not just with language. So I think I'm learning to incorporate more and more of it with all sorts of different styles of my therapy. So I think that has made it more interesting for the students.
Yeah.
I really do. And they want to learn. It's just so much fun that they want to come and know more. Tell me more.
I think that piece is huge there.
Yeah, middle school is the kids that really, it's a treasury for them. Mm-hmm. And they know that they're different, and they feel funny about the whole thing. And so when you can increase that confidence, if I'm more confident about it, they're going to be more confident about it. And that's the piece that excites me. So.
Well, I appreciate that. And I'm glad that it had those results for you.
Yeah. Where have you been all these years?
Yeah. Well, I've been in the trenches with you, so I'm glad to start sharing it and putting it out there. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for taking the time to answer these questions.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for all that you're doing. It's just really appreciative.
Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to check the show notes for all of the links where you can go to learn about all of the great resources that we mentioned in this episode, as well as where you can go to learn more about Language Therapy Advanced Foundations, my program that helps SLPs and other professionals working on language to create a system for language therapy. You can learn more about the program at drkarenspeech.com/language therapy. As always, thank you so much for listening. It helps me so much if you leave me a rating or review wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you found this useful, please feel free to share it with your friends or colleagues. If you are interested in being a guest, if you would like to invite me to be a guest on your show, or if you have a suggestion for a guest, please send me an email at talktome@drkarenspeech.com. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next time.